Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy's Conquest. In the last one we went through most of Gloomy Gulch and now we're at the boss fight of said world. Creepy Crow. Crow is back from Gangplank Galley. He's brought along some friends from the grave, some ghost Neckies. However, there's one living Neckie among every single volley. Taking that out spawns a barrel, in which case when Crow himself does the little swoop across the stage, you can throw at him to hit him. Now, there is a glitch with this in the version 1.0 of the game where I forget if you need to find him, not like take the DK barrel with you for us, or if you just need to touch him in general. But if you hit him while he's climbing between the floors of the ship, the game crashes. So don't do that if you're playing this on hardware, because that could be problematic. That's also not the only weird glitch with a boss fight. I think in version 1.0, King Zing moves slower, but I forget if that's during the Ramby Rumble stage or during the actual boss fight. There's also a third notable problem with 1.0, but that's regarding a gimmick from a level later on in the game, so I'll go over that when the time comes. Honestly, this is a fairly easy boss fight as long as you get a good rhythm going. If you know how high to jump and learn how high to jump over the ghost Neckies, you can take care of this no problem. Just make sure to time your jump a little bit carefully, a little bit differently when the real life Neckie comes around, otherwise you're gonna miss an opportunity to hit him until he swoops across the screen. Because after he does swoop across the screen, he throws another volley of ghost Neckies at you, in which case you can just try again. But with that, we're all wrapped up in Gloomy Gulch, so now it's time for the head honcho's headquarters. Welcome to K.Rool's Keep, and we're starting off in Arctic Abyss. And from the top of my head, I want to say this is the world that got some of the most overhauls in the Game Boy Advance version. Partially just in terms of level layout changes. And by that I mean like where they're located on the world map. Because the Game Boy Advance version did change around some level orders, but I only remember this world off the top of my head. And we'll go over that more when we continue through. However, I do believe this level also had a difference in the Game Boy Advance version visually. I think it was generally just greener, which is odd, but I'll take it. Dash through there, because that's where the first bonus of this level is, and that took me a bit longer to find than I'd admit, because for some reason I just never looked up there on my first, like, 3 playthroughs of this stage. Now, in general, K.Rool's Keep in difficulty is about the same as Gloomy Gulch, except in 2, maybe 3 occasions. One of them just because one of the levels here is one of the fan least favorites, and 2 levels I just have a bad time in. Is the best way to put it. Now, I just realized, I don't think I went over the Gloomy Gulch bio, let alone K.Rool's Keep we haven't gotten to yet. So let's go over those from the manual. For Gloomy Gulch, you're not out of the woods yet. In fact, you're just entering it when you get to Gloomy Gulch. This spooky area is haunted by evil crumbling spirits known as K.O.N.G and Kastle. Even the ropes that once provided a safe way to climb over obstacles are now ghostly and insubstantial. And for K.Rool's Keep, Captain K.Rool is no fool. He saved the most dastardly traps for use in his own fortress lair. None has entered K.Rool's Keep and lived to tell the tale. Will Diddy or Dixie be the first? Now you see the way they phrase that, it's as if they wanted this game to be multiplayer from the start. However, I honestly just don't find Donkey Kong Country multiplayers to be that fun. It's one thing in Returns, because Returns had actual 2-player where both players were controlling a character at once, but in Donkey Kong Country 1 through 3, if I'm recalling, at least I haven't done it in forever, both players control one character, but it's only one at a time because of how the active Kong system works, where you can only have Diddy or Dixie active. And multiplayers like that can be fun, don't get me wrong. Mario Bros. 1, for instance, is a blast multiplayer, and same as Mario World. But for Donkey Kong Country and the way its levels work, where you can literally just swap at any point and be like, yeah, you deal with this hard challenge while I take the victory at the end of the stage anyway, just doesn't feel right to me. Now, something I've briefly mentioned when I was talking about the Krem coin cheat earlier on in the game is that the Game Boy Advance version added a little cheat code entry screen that allows you to enter a couple codes and have different effects happen for each one, as most cheat code menus are. In terms of what all the cheat codes are, there's Wellard, W-E-L-L-A-R-D, which is the no DK barrels mode from this game. Rockard, which is rock and then A-R-D, is no DK or star barrels, so essentially you have to get through each level on 1 life. Freedom with a capital F opens every level in the game, but that's also what gives you all the Krem coins in the game. One time, as in like one time as one word, opens the music player screen. Credits spelled with a K opens the music players, it just shows you the game's credits, rather. Rich Man, as one word, starts you with 10 banana coins. Help Me, all one word and all lowercase, starts you with 15 lives. Well Rich, as one word, gives you 50 banana coins, and Weakling gives you 55 lives. And the lives means a bit more in the GBA version, because the Super Nintendo version, when you turn off the console or reset it, it doesn't save your life or banana coin total, while the Game Boy Advance version, it does. So you have a bit more going on there. And now we got more wind platforming, only this time it's vertical. Yay. Although, admittedly, I think vertical wind platforming, as rare as it is as a gimmick, is more tolerable to me than horizontal wind gimmicks, because I hate wind platforming. It's essentially an inverse parachute panic, where holding down makes you rise slower, holding up makes you go much faster, and left to right is fairly standard. Just try not to hit anything, and you can generally be good, but you want to be very careful about right here, because we need to worm our way underneath that zinger to get that bonus barrel. Yeah, that's a bit uncomfy. I don't like that one at all. This level, I believe, was one of the ones that I was getting into earlier, where in the Game Boy Advanced version, the levels here were swapped around a little bit. Windy Well, I believe this is, was made the 4th level in K.Rool's keep. The next level was turned into the 2nd level, and the 4th level was made the 3rd. And I don't like that order, honestly, because the level that was made, the 2nd level, is the fan least favorite of this world, and probably one of the 3 fan least favorite levels in the game. So, yikes. That's kind of a rough level to have so early on in the world. Thinking about it, though, if I'm recalling correctly, I believe this particular stage aesthetic is called the Mine Shaft type. This is probably my least favorite stage type in the game, because all 3 of them I believe there are, because there's this, the one with the really stupid DK coin in the bonus, and that other one. I just don't really have fun in these levels. I can't exactly place why. Maybe it's because they're more vertically structured, and with the ability set that Kongs have, they're much better suited to a horizontally structured stage, barring having squawks around. So it just doesn't feel right for most of this. That does go into something I think that a lot of games do right, but some games also don't do right, where you need to make sure your levels are structured well to your character's abilities. Yeah, having one that's not counteractive, but challenging to the ability set is one thing, but having it not suit the playstyle right just isn't a good idea in my eyes. With that said, though, I'll still take vertically structured levels for more horizontally structured characters, but for the Kongs, it just doesn't feel right. Thankfully, the team throw ability exists in this game, and that makes it feel a little bit better, but for some people, it just wouldn't feel right. And time for one of the weirder bonuses in the game. The bonus barrel is actually underneath the goal. We need to make sure we get this clobber, knock out that cutlass, and then we got it. Honestly, given the kind of exploration they want you to do in this series, I'm surprised they don't try to hide stuff behind the goals more often, starting in 2 onwards. They do it a couple times, yeah, but I guess they didn't want to be too predictable by doing it too much. 1, they couldn't do it at all, just because 1 worked much differently compared to 2 and 3 in terms of some mechanics. And we actually want to get rid of squawks here, but we want to use the hooks just behind him so we can use the wind in order to get the end of level target. This is actually how you get the G Kong letter, and I'm not going back in that level to get that. Like I've said, my major thing with this LP is just showing off where every Kong letter is, and if the case I can't, I just talk about where it is, like the O in Parachute Panic. If I can't grab it, oh well, but I'd still like to tell you where it is. And time for my least favorite level on this world. Welcome to Castle Crush. This is also a new world aesthetic. This is the dungeon. The entire thing with this level is that you have this very slow platform moving up through the stage. It'll grab enemies and barrels and drag you along with it. The reason I don't like this level so much completely involves just the fact that it takes forever, because you have to wait for the platform for most of it. However, there is one very famous thing about this level, and that's that there is a major glitch dedicated to it. If you play as Diddy and you pick up the first DK barrel and hold it against a wall, If you hold down at that point and quickly release it and hold Y again to drop the barrel and pick it back up, the barrel will break, but Diddy will be holding nothing, essentially holding air in front of him. Releasing Y at that point will just spawn nearby objects in front of you with glitched properties like moving faster than they should. However, it really gets crazy when you jump into the Rambi barrel at that point, because you won't turn into a normal Rambi. Instead, you'll just turn into one of several glitched entities like the barrels, the K.O.N.G s, various enemies, so on and so forth. And sometimes those sprites are stretched, sometimes it just cusses monkey noises. The most famous ones is that it just crashes the game outright, though defeating an enemy at that point can actually return you to the map screen. But the problem with that is, it's an actually potentially horrifically damaging glitch, as quite famously, it can completely mess up a save file. Either just make it all weird and glitchy, completely delete it, or corrupt it, period. And there's even reports of it breaking the cartridge or the console. Now, from what I've read, it breaking consoles is completely coincidental and not actually an effect of the glitch. The cartridge, though, can technically happen because it can corrupt, apparently, the SRAM in such a way that it prevents the game from booting up normally. There are ways to fix that, like deleting SRAM files or removing the backup battery until the RAM clears itself up entirely. But if you're playing this game on hardware, be careful in this stage. I wouldn't rush through it, and make sure you're just careful in general. This also isn't the only stage you can do that in. Apparently, back in Mudhole Marsh, you can do that with the Barrel Axe cheat enabled, which is the one that, I think that's the hard mode one. Because if you break some of the treasure chests, you can grab the resulting DK barrel while it's in midair, and your K.O.N.G can grab it before it's technically erased, but nothing happens with that at all. So it's just a complete coincidence in that case. And now the level gets a bit easier because we can play as Squawk, speeding up this level admittedly to some extent, but still being kind of tedious. This is probably one of my favorite endgame area themes in the entire series, though, because this has a good melody, but it also has ominous factor, which is really good. Also, you need to make sure Squawk survives so you can get this other bonus room. And if I'm recalling the level correctly, I want to say this bonus room takes us almost out to the exit. This is a bonus I had trouble with when I first played the game because you just need to avoid getting crushed. But looking back, I don't know why I had trouble with it. Because you just need to not even follow the bananas. You can get away with not following them for the most part until this very end section where they start getting kind of tight. Hold the Y button, of course, to run, but otherwise, you're fine. You have more than enough time to get to the end and jump up to get the Krem coin. Yeah, I want to say we're near the boss fight. No, actually, no. Boss fight. And a clear target. No, we still got a bit more to go. I just remembered. Now, I said earlier on in this part that this world has 2 or 3 notably difficult levels. This is one of them. And between the two in this world, this is the one I like less just because I don't have control over how fast I progress through it for the most part, except for that one section with Squawks. The other level is hard for different reasons. We'll get into that later this part, or is it next part? I think it might be next part, actually. But I'm more of the mindset that this is the worst level, but that's my reasoning. Other people dislike the other level because it is honestly probably, in terms of actual content and platforming, the harder stage. But I'm more of the mindset that something that is tedious is worse than something that is worse than something that is hard. And I just find waiting around for auto-scroll levels of this type to be tedious. It's one thing if it's a small platform I need to stay on, otherwise I can't complete the level or I die. But it's another thing if it's just a giant, slow, vertical auto-scroller with relatively low threat factor, and this is not a good place to be in. You need to make sure you don't step on that Cruncha early on, otherwise you're just going to have him follow you all the way up here. You can get crushed by anything else otherwise, though. And my best recommendation for dodging those crooks is to just jump from left to right. Jump towards the crook throwing the thing, not away from it. Now, similarly to a couple other things I talked about this part, like the cheat codes, I mentioned briefly that there are mini-games added to the Game Boy Advance version, partially to pad things out, to add a bit more content, add a couple more DK coins, stuff like that. But in terms of what they are and what they entail, Espresso racing, as I mentioned, you get the golden feathers found in each level to power up Espresso to race against other Espressos, plain and simple there. Funky's flights, you use the gyrocopter to navigate mazes and do tasks for DK coins. Diddy's dash is just a time trial mode for the standard levels. Nothing too major there. And Bagabug, you catch fireflies and avoid Clubba. None of them are too complex. Espresso Racing from the top of my head is probably the most complex one there, just due to how it works. But otherwise, nothing you really miss out on. The worst thing they added is probably the way they changed the sound test around, because you have to hear the Game Boy Advanced instruments. And as I've mentioned several times before through several LPs, Super Nintendo ports on the Game Boy Advance did not do good sound. It's a shame too, because the Game Boy Advance itself can knock out some really good soundtracks. Just look at any of the Zelda games on it, for instance. And by that I mean the one. But the Mega Man soundtracks as well, good stuff. Either way, Clapper is back from that one level in World 2, and this time around he actually turns the water into ice. So roughly the exact opposite. During the first and third portions of the level, rather, you need to do that to avoid a returning Lockjaw. However, this time around, Lockjaw is, I guess not Lockjaw, Snapjaw, I think is the actual character's name, is quite a bit more aggressive in terms of how fast he likes to follow you. So you need to be a bit quicker on the draw. The ice does have ice physics, and that means if you get some good speed going, you can slide under some enemies. In fact, you need to do that in some instances. And overall, it's not a hard level. Honestly, it's probably the easiest level in the world. But I'd still be careful. Don't take your time, but watch out to what's ahead of you, I guess is the best way to describe it. It's a shame this game doesn't have any of the Mario World kind of ideas where you can scroll the level left and right, or scroll the camera left and right. But at the same time, admittedly, I do like what the series does in one regard, in that the camera's always showing you a good view of what's ahead when it comes to platforming, so you don't ever feel trapped by level design unless you're rushing too hard. The one time where the camera really can't keep up with you is if you build up enough speed from hitting enough enemies in a row. And even then, the game generally makes it so that you can only really do that early on in the game. Later on, you generally have a better chance of not having that happen. Throw this barrel here, by the way, just to get rid of some enemies. I think you're technically supposed to save it for that crunch up, but as you can see, I could just jump over that, no problem. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in Part 8, we're going to be continuing on in K.Rool's Keep, probably finishing it in the process. See you guys then.